morning, everyone. Welcome. So glad to see you all today. All right, folks coming in, go ahead and get yourselves settled and we'll get started for today. Just want to start by saying I had a really fun time yesterday. Thank you. Thanks for coming and playing in the woods with me and with the TAs. And does anyone have any thoughts after sleeping last night? Any thoughts related to the field trip that they'd like to share? I'll get you a microphone, just a second. I don't know where the microphones are today. Do you know where the microphone? Oh, Peyton's going. Great, thank you.
I went home after the field trip and kind of reflected on how I felt during it and talked to my friends and my roommate about it. And I basically just talked to them about how I didn't really realize how much I missed doing things like going outside and hiking and just enjoying the outdoors and playing in trees, because I used to do it all the time as a kid. And I guess as you get older, you kind of lose interest in that kind of stuff, where you're just too busy to do it because you have other things, so you're inside all the time. So I just kind of didn't realize how much I missed doing that and how much I want to make it more of a priority in my life going forward.
Sweet. Thank you. I'm glad that that was your experience. Thank you for sharing. You can take some of those friends and roommates with you. That's fun. Anybody else have any comments? Thoughts about that? All right, fantastic. Then we'll go ahead and get things started for today. As usual, a couple of general announcements. Our final extra credit movie will be next Monday, so you can jot this information down for that Monday, April 18th. And then my next thought is that some of you have been asking about becoming TAs for BiSci 3. And so some beautiful TAs that, yeah. And the way the system works is that if you're curious about becoming a TA, and really just curious, you don't have to be fully gung-ho, you don't have to be, just I'm so desperate to do, even if you have just a little inkling of maybe this is something that might interest you, then you schedule a conversation with me or with Pedro, and we'll be sending out a link to do that. So the first step is that you sign up for a conversation, and then you come in, and those conversations will be in our office at 328 Mueller. And so you come in for a conversation, and we talk about it. And then what happens, we let you know if we have space for you, if we think that it's a good match. And then you have the power of choice, right? Yeah, it's BiSci, so then you can choose whether yes or no. Maybe it doesn't fit quite the way you thought it would, which is totally fine. And so then those who would like to proceed as TAs then do a class. So the class will be held on Monday evenings in the fall semester. And it's an extension of BiSci 3, really. It's about another journal, it's about some more readings, it's about good conversations, preparing you to be a TA. So the TA class is worth 3 credits, happens in the fall, and then moving forward is when you would TA in the spring of 2023. And so you would get to, as a TA, you come and sit in this room again with your students, and you take attendance, all the things that you see your TAs doing, reading journals, doing the field trip, all kinds of pieces. So if this is something that you're curious about, then please come and chat with us at one of those conversations. I do ask that if you sign up for a conversation, please write down in your own planner when you signed up for, so that you actually show up to meet us. That's really cool when you come. And we look forward to talking with you. If you're curious and want to talk to your own TA or other TAs that you see moving around the room, they can give you their experience and share some of their stories with you about what being a TA is like. Pedro, am I missing anything? Nope, got it. Okay, great. You can also just send us emails or, whatever is the right communication. But TA conversations are one of my absolute favorite times to sit and talk with people. So I look forward to this. It's pretty exciting. All right, and then moving forward with what we have for today. This is where we've been. We've been thinking about, let me say this first. In your journal this week, the reflection action assignment is that you're imagining a new story for yourself, a new story for culture, and we're in a place of cultural shift. Some of us talked about that yesterday in our small group circles at Shavers Creek. This idea that we're in some kind of cultural shift opportunity, and so now you get to create, be a creative soul, and write a future story about that. How will you find a path that's inspiring and exciting to you? So I'd like you to take a deep breath in and a slow exhalation. Long inhale and a slow exhale. And this time when you breathe in slowly, notice how your ribs expand to make space for your lungs to expand, to make space for that air to come in. Same thing with your spine, how your spine changes when you take that deep breath. There's a slight expansion. We're meant to be flexible. Flexibility helps us to survive. One of my mentors in my professional career, the first director of Shavers Creek, I said, what's something that I should know? This is when I was starting as an intern. What's something that I should know about Shavers Creek moving forward? And he said, change is the only constant around here. Change is the only constant. And I thought that was pretty cool. What does that really mean? Like being able, what I've learned is that it's being able to be flexible, being able to be patient sometimes and anxious other times, and being aware of those things. And so in this moment, I'd like you to talk about this with your partner. How flexible are you when it comes to change? Talk to your partner. there anybody who would like to speak to this? How flexible are you when it comes to change? Thanks, Peyton.
So me and my group members were talking about how it depends on like what it is. Like we were saying if like we feel like we're ready for it, or if we feel like it's something we've been like working towards and it's like a positive change in our life, then we're pretty flexible with it. But if it's something like really unexpected or something very sad, like a breakup or like the death of a family member, we're not necessarily the best with it. But it also depends on like the timing in our lives, like if we feel like we're well enough to handle change or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's well said. Thank you. That's great. Great reflection. Any other comments about this? Yes.
So I was telling my partner about how my family decided to move this summer while I was at a 7-week summer camp and I wasn't allowed to leave the camp. And I was really upset and I was like, this is the worst change ever. But then I learned that home is people and not a place. So while I thought that was going to be like the most difficult change in my life, it actually was a really important life lesson.
Oh, thanks for sharing, Lydia. Nice. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
We were talking about how, especially being here, there's a lot of opportunities to change and grow as people. And as flexible as we want to be, it's so easy to hold on to what we once were, when in reality the best thing to do is continue to move and adapt. But there's always going to be a part that's trying to grab onto the past, and it can be upsetting when, it's not there anymore,
Yeah. Yeah, shifting. Thank you. These are sweet reflections. Yeah.
I was telling my partner how with like COVID, it's really like that was very unexpected. And I feel like a lot of us had like a lot of like plans and stuff like that. And like now I don't get my hopes too high about things. Like I have a trip planned for the summer and even still I'm like, it might, get canceled or something. So yeah.
Yeah. Right. There's kind of a big life lesson in that too. Thank you. So flexibility when it comes to change. So what we've been talking about here in class is the idea that we can significantly lower our ecological footprint and potentially work less and have more fun and be more creative. All these things may be becoming more fully human. So how can we exercise that flexibility in the things, the ideas that we hold, and flex them to fit something that actually might be more a healthier place for us, as well as a healthier place for the environment. So, as I said, I think that we're on this doorstep of this revolution. And part of me is like, wait, I want all those things. I want to have more fun, be more free and creative. And so if that means that I can own less stuff that I have to take care of, pay less money for that stuff that I don't need, and then have more fun or make more connections, then that's definitely where I want to be. I want to be having fun. Change can be, flexibility can be that enlivening and fun and creative place. So today we're talking about transportation. So as always, in the matter of 50 minutes, there's not time for me to present all the angles, all the information, all the details, but my role, I feel, is to spark your thoughts and interests and your own questions, and then you can go out and explore those things, maybe inspire you to dig a little bit more deeply into things. So with transportation, we're going to start here. What are cars great for? Why do you love, or why do we think that we all want, and maybe not all, why do many of us want cars? Okay. You can talk to your neighbor. Why don't we do it that way? Talk to your neighbor. Why do we need cars?
side's always so dark?
It feels really
I
dark.
don't know,
I don't
but
know.
when I turn it up, it just gets brighter up here. So I'll just play with it afterwards. But
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know. I was like,
They're,
are
so
there
dark. I
hands
hope they're
up?
not like asleep back there, but I don't know how to turn it up without this being like.
Right.
So yeah. I don't know.
Well, this can be brighter. You can
Yeah.
turn it, yeah, maybe after this conversation you can turn it up a notch and we can experiment.
Yeah.
Because you're right, I don't want them falling asleep. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's better. It's good. All right, what are cars great for? Why do you want a car? Yes. Or why do you think you want a car?
I think cars are really great for like therapy drives where you just blast music with your windows down.
Blast music, windows down, totally get. Therapy drives, I kind of like that phrase. Did you just coin that? I think you might become famous. Yeah, therapy drives, nice. What else? Well, oh, yeah.
Getting places quickly.
Yes, getting places quickly. Yes. What else? Thanks for bringing that forward. Yeah.
Freedom.
In what way? Say more about that.
I know especially like at our ages that we want to like get away from our parents and be able to go places like with our friends or ourselves, and cars allow for that.
For sure. I have very distinct memories of doing exactly that. Yes. Okay.
DoorDash and other convenience things you can get driven to your house.
Yep. So having other people drive stuff to you. Yep. What else? There's one in the back row there, Peyton. Thank you.
I think it's like a great way to express yourself. Like if it's like a
Ooh.
passion that you have, it's like depending on what you put into your car, you can make it your own. Or I think it's great to just like take like an ordinary car and make it a way to express yourself to other people without being obnoxious, of course. But it is what it is.
Right. Thank you. Expression, freedom of expression. Good. Is there someone up there?
It's usually a more safe and more comfortable way of transportation.
Safe and comfortable. Interesting. Yep. Can be. We're going to break that down a little bit here in just a couple minutes. Anything else? I think we've covered quite a few. That's good. All right. So cars are great in a lot of different ways, and exactly what you've just said. You know, there's a lot of freedom that we get, particularly whether it's the therapy drives alone or whether it's escaping from parents or whether it's the freedom of my schedule. You know, it just doesn't work for me to ride the bus that comes and goes from my neighborhood. And so I have the freedom of my schedule to work with. So cars are great for so many different things. It's true that 93% of households in the U.S. had access to at least one car in 2019. 77.3% of people in the United States think owning a car is necessary, even despite the evolution of rideshare. And that means 22% said no, owning a car is not necessary. So it's interesting to think that we lived for thousands of years and now without cars, and now we feel, 77% of us think that we must have them. It's kind of an interesting point, an evolution of culture. So, as you know, in BiSci 3, we do a lot of questioning of assumptions. So can you imagine life without cars? So today we're going to talk a little bit about that evolution right now of how. Jamie, could you pull up that video for me, please? Thank you. So check this out, evolution.
American cities have fundamentally altered how they built themselves over the last 60 years. And to me, the place that it really started was the 1939 World's Fair. at what was the most successful World's Fair in history, the most successful exhibit was one called Futurama.
To help us get a glimpse into the future of this unfinished world of ours, there has been created for the New York World's Fair a thought-provoking exhibit of the developments ahead of us. A vivid tribute to the American scheme of living. Come, let's travel into the future. What will we see?
Futurama portrayed the future of the city in that distant year, 1960.
The world we are now seeing is a vision, an artistic conception which may undergo many changes as it develops into the great realities of tomorrow.
And it portrayed a city that was car-driven, lots of open spaces. You could live in the country and drive to your job downtown, and you'd have the best of two worlds.
Over space, man has begun to win victory.
Suburban splendor and urban excitement. Not coincidentally, Futurama was sponsored by General Motors, and they were promoting what we wanted. And it's my sense that 1939, just before the war, the clouds are looming over Europe. We go off to war, and we have this image that's mulling in our minds, and we come back and we implement Futurama.
15 million GIs came back from the war, clamoring for new homes and a piece of land in the country. Almost overnight, suburbia was born.
About American communities. And my father was a part of that because he was a builder. And so in our area in Kansas City, Missouri, his employer, the J.C. Nichols Company, was finishing a home a day for years following the Second World War. And this was all about a new, hopeful American dream.
So the evolution of how it came to be. So we moved from this, I learned about this video from this book, which is really The Future We Choose, talking about where we've been and where we're moving to, and how we are going to move through this point of crisis that we're in right now. But suburbia, the most ecological, harmful form of land settlement ever invented. Why? Why is it the most harmful form of land settlement? Space for each house, away from the city. I love that that exhibit was sponsored by General Motors. You know, they want you to buy cars in order to get from your home in the suburbs to the urban excitement, as they said. And really where it comes into the damage comes from this idea that we all are driving to and from these places. So 1 gallon of gas leads to 20 pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It seems nearly impossible. A gallon of gas weighs 6.3 pounds. But then what happens in your car's combustion engine, it's splitting apart the carbon and the hydrogen that are in there. It's combusting that. And the carbon joins up with oxygen, as does the hydrogen. The hydrogen and oxygen together make water, which come out of your engine's tailpipe or your car's tailpipe, right? You see that condensation coming out. The CO2 oxygen is a really heavy element. And so when those two combine together, that's what happens, is that the chemistry explains this equation. 1 gallon of gas that equals 6.3 pounds turns into 20 pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So there's a really significant shift. And when we're talking today about transportation, the sources of greenhouse gas emissions, transportation, 28%. So over a quarter of what we're putting into our atmosphere comes from our transportation choices. If we really think about this full cost accounting, right now gas is really expensive because of the world circumstances that we're in. If we think about the full cost accounting of gasoline, just like when we were talking about how the clothing we make, that pair of shorts can't really be worth $5, because there's the fabric and the labor and the shipping. Like, full cost accounting is what we're talking about. And so when we do that with gasoline, we consider all of the property acquisition and the exploration to find the gasoline and the development costs, and those are all added together. It means that gasoline should be more like $15 a gallon when we really consider what all of the work is that goes into that gasoline. We are not actually paying what it costs, even now, at the prices that we're paying. And then there are the other costs of cars as well. So for all of this freedom, there's also these flip sides, right? We can, somebody said the safety, which is a hard one for me because it does feel pretty safe, and yet there are, in your category of drivers, of the deaths related to 15 to 20-year-olds, car accidents account for 20% of those deaths. It's the highest, it's the biggest category. And so safety, they aren't actually particularly safe. More than 38,000 people die every year in the United States on the roadways in car crashes. Economic and social impact of those crashes cost the United States $871 billion. And then pedestrian and bicycle fatalities continue to rise as well. Over almost 7,000 pedestrians were killed by cars. So what's happening today is you see a lot of advertisements and pushes about distracted driving. And I was thinking about it even as I drove here from Shavers Creek this morning, that I was snacking, right? I was eating Chex Mix, and even that was distracting. I wasn't on my phone, but that can be a huge distraction. Even just taking a drink of coffee or whatever. So I am part of this. I'm multitasking in ways that can be really dangerous. So as I came to do this, I was reflecting on my own behavior. So cars are not particularly actually safer. So we have to consider all of these things. And then what else are cars doing in our neighborhoods? We're going to, sorry, this clicker, if you ever think I'm kind of crazy, the clicker doesn't move forward, actually. Could you play this video for me, Jamie?
Livable Streets provided the first evidence-based research of the problem of traffic on neighborhood streets. It provided the foundational arguments for traffic calming.
Donald Appleyard, who is a professor, conducted a series of studies on 3 different streets in San Francisco, chosen to be as identical as possible in every dimension except for one, the amount of traffic on each street. And what Donald Appleyard was able to show, that just the mere presence of cars with the envelope of danger that they project around them and the noise and the pollution crushes the quality of life in our neighborhoods.
What's really interesting about the graphics in the livable streets and what they really provided was it removed us from just looking at specific numbers of people being hit or killed on streets, but actually showing that there was this other way that we could measure the environmental impacts of traffic on neighborhood streets. Things such as a light traffic street helped knit a community together, and in contrast, a heavily trafficked street would actually rip it apart, and fewer social ties were able to be created.
This chart here shows the social interaction on these 3 different streets. So each line shows a connection between one person on the street and another. There are just a lot fewer lines on the heavily trafficked street as opposed to the moderate or the light traffic street, which clearly has a lot more interconnection. So what these charts are showing is that people on the light traffic street, no more people have more friends than on the heavily trafficked street. On the light traffic street, people have on average 3 friends per person. And on the heavily trafficked street, 0.9 friends per person. The fact that the amount of traffic on the street on which you live can impact the number of friends you have in the world is of enormous significance. The other thing that Donald Appleyard plotted on these charts are these little dots that indicate where people gather. So it shows on the heavily trafficked street, there are a much smaller number of dots, and there are only a handful of places where people would gather on their street. The fact that they were able to measure and quantify the reduction in number of friends, in number of acquaintances that's caused by traffic is enormously important and helps to illuminate the invisible harm that's done by traffic every day.
So when I started reflecting on this, I thought I was obviously applying it to my own neighborhood. So this is where I live in Pine Grove Mills. This is Route 45 that travels here. This is Route 26 that goes up. This is where you traveled with the bus up and over the mountain. This red spot here is my house. And so what I've noticed, what I experience in my own neighborhood is that the people that I know and spend most time with are all in this box. Those are the people. And so when I started then thinking about this traffic and this traffic, it makes it very clear. To cross this intersection, this is where the post office is, it's really a crazy intersection to try to cross, even to get my mail, which is what they obligate us to do when we live that close to the post office. We have to get our mail at the post office. So it's interesting that I don't even know, and if you know, I like talking to people, I like knowing people. I don't know the people that live across the street from me. It's all the people that live next to me and beside me and then up the hill that way from me. And I think that it is because of the traffic. I don't let my kids cross those streets, and so therefore I'm not meeting the parents of those kids that my kids are playing with. So it's a really interesting reflection on how cars and traffic can affect us. The idea too that we could create more open spaces, cities as places to live instead of just work, commuting into them. And so there's an example of this here in town. Think about Allen Street, particularly the block between the corner room and Panera, going up that way, that whole block. It has been proposed for years that that space could be just community space. So there would not be cars traveling in that block of Allen Street. So that way, if you're crossing from shops or restaurants, going to Pickles, whatever it is, that there wouldn't be traffic there. Maybe a fountain, maybe whatever. So I'd like you to take a minute to think about that. How would making that change? What do you think? Is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? Talk to your partner about that. All right, Jamie. So what do you think? Anybody pro for closing off that street? How many people are pro? Raise your hand. All right. And how many people say no, don't close it off? And I don't have an opinion. I just think it's an interesting debate. So can I hear from somebody who says, yes, close off the street? Okay. Great.
Yeah, I'm definitely pro closing off like Allen Street because I know, like, I'm from the town and I know that when the Arts Fest comes in,
yeah.
it's like a major thing that like blocks off that entire road, like all the way down past the municipal building. And I think that would make that a lot easier and like definitely increase like the traffic that's in that area. And also like the farmers markets do that anyway, like a few streets down. So I think it just makes sense.
Right. Just makes sense. There are enough events that happen here in town that, yeah, makes sense. Thank you for your pro. Yes.
I was saying that I've got a somewhat unique perspective on this because I used to work at Sully Boys, which is in that area. And a couple summers ago, I think it was in 2018, there was the vote to like close it off and have that community space. And I believe it had to be a unanimous decision among the businesses, and the only holdout was Rapid Transit, which is a shoe store. And you would think, being a shoe store, they would be in favor of that, but for some reason they were not. So I was always in favor of it. It would increase a lot of business among the local businesses there, but it just didn't happen because rapid transit is almost always the holdout.
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't know what his ideas are about that. Terry is the owner, and I don't know exactly. I'll engage him in that conversation next time I'm in there. But yeah, interesting. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Yes.
As someone whose family comes here a lot, every time that I've visited with my family or my family visits, like, I feel like Penn State is a place for walking. Like, my parents will park the car and then we walk everywhere. So it's kind of already a community space for walking. And then on top of that, I also feel like it's kind of dangerous as like students walking, people walking, having so many streets where cars are coming out of. And so I feel like it really wouldn't hurt to have a closed off space that's safer and then also more for the community, so people who live downtown have more of a space to do homework, hang out, walk through without feeling like there's cars everywhere.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, let's hear from the other side.
Thanks. I was going to say, can I share a con?
Yeah.
Or a couple cons. So, for one, the Champs downtown line would just be a massive cluster. Like, it'd be bad. Like, they'd have to figure out how to get people in. So then line leap would basically be impossible unless they had that figured out. But then also, like, as an Uber driver, people don't want to walk, like, so if, like, you have to drop someone off on Allen and they need to walk down to get to Champs, like, they're just going to be irritated. So, like, from the other side, it hurts, like, business, because then they rate us bad. So, because we can't get them closer to where their drop-off is.
Interesting perspectives. Yeah, I hadn't thought about either of those things. Thanks, Avery. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm pro because back in high school I went to London for like a school trip, and they kind of have this like type of like deal. Like I also went to like Edinburgh too, and like it's just so much cooler like having like just a sidewalk and not like being aware of cars. Like you don't have to be aware of anything. Like you just walk into a store, walk out, walk to another store, walk out. Like you don't gotta look both ways, nothing like that. Like it's
it
easy.
feels more leisurely.
Exactly, and I also think like, I don't know, I feel like people can walk.
Right.
I think going to like, I don't know, like Champs and stuff, they'll already be like drunk, so like I think walking won't be that bad. Like.
Thank you. Pro. So there are, possibilities of this, of ways to build community, and there might be other nooks and crannies like this, either here in State College or thinking about your own hometown, wherever that might be. So if we're thinking about lowering our transportation footprint, what might be possible? So if you were to go back 100 years, let's see, that would put us 1922. If you knew what you know about cars today and how they have shifted the building of the highways and shifted our communities and shifted all kinds of things like we've just related, then there's all the other stuff too. The amount of deaths, the military action over oil, separation from each other and breakdown of community, the climate change, the noise, our health issues. If you were back there 100 years ago, would you have said yes? Obviously, it's a rhetorical question, but would you have said, yeah, go for it, General Motors, woo! Or not? I think it's a tough place to be. It's another one of those times when something has evolved that that may or may not be exactly what we need. Do you have a comment? You want to add something? Okay. All right. And so there is this idea, and Avery just pointed out something that is interesting, that 20% of all car trips in the United States are less than a mile. So, the guy who says, yeah, we can walk, then some people say, no, I'm not going to walk. So this is a real debate. But if we do go back to that idea of full cost accounting for the cars that we own, thinking about my car, I can think about the fact that, I have my monthly payment on my car. And then, so I'm working. How many hours does it take me to work each month to make that car payment? And then it takes me the time to stop and get gas. And then it takes me the time, and there's all that money that goes into like car repairs and the fuel and the tolls and the insurance and the taxes and the maintenance, like all these different things where, again, I need to work those hours to get that money to then pay for those things related to my car. So it turns out that that we're really only going about 10 miles an hour. So even on the times that I'm going 70 miles an hour in my car, if I account for all the time that I'm working and doing things to support my car, it really slows me actually way down. So how is it, how dedicated are you to your car or to your future car? And really, is it the right choice for you? I know that one of my great joys of being in quarantine was that I wasn't driving anywhere. But that's me. I'm not saying that that's, the right way. It's just that I found out how much time it takes me and consumes of my day when I'm doing all that driving around. It's also true that, we were not designed to be a species that are sitting as much as we are these days. And so how that shows up in our hypertension and our body weight and being what a percentage of Americans are overweight and that we're not moving as much. So does driving really save time? It does in the moment, for sure. I mean, if I was biking to campus every morning, that would certainly change my day around. You could do a time audit about this. If you're just running over less than a mile, you can do a time audit. Is it going to be that by the time you get yourself ready, find your keys, and then get to wherever your car is parked and then do the driving, is that really faster than if you were just to walk and do whatever and then walk back? So it's just a point for reflection. There are also, public transportation, depending on where you are and what they're offering And I know that some of you are from bigger cities and there's lots of options, or it might be other options. And the list of this, I just asked you for pros and cons. The list of pros and cons about this, I'm not expecting you to read this slide, but a lot of opinions about this. And I think it's also based around where and what is available to you. Overall, public transportation is better for the environment because it's more people going the same direction using that one resource instead of all of us going separately. But then there are the cons about timing and reliability and how flexible, going back to flexibility, how flexible your schedule is. And so public transportation, we have the pros and the cons related to that. And then bicycles, it is just simple fact that bicycles are way more efficient. The average fuel economy for 2021 model cars was 25.7 miles per gallon. And so, first of all, I don't know why. I know that there's capacity to make that cars much more effective and efficient, but for some reason we're kind of slow to make that action. But then a typical car uses 50 to 80 times more energy to move than people on bicycles. Bikes get 930 miles per gallon, essentially. So if you're comparing the amount of calories in a gallon of gas, then to the number of calories that you'd have to eat to bike that far, then you get that. So it's way more efficient. 100 calories can power a bicyclist for 3 miles, but 100 calories can only drive a car about 280 feet. So there's lots of choices, and there are places that are doing it differently, right? There are places that are celebrating bicycling. And then these are bicycle lanes in Europe, so it's much more popular. And then there's the possibility of flying and just how cost-consuming, how gallons of gasoline are consumed in this. The greenhouse gases of one person flying round trip New York to London is the same as what it takes to heat a single family home for a year. So flying takes up a whole lot of resources. But there are different ways to do it, and we'll touch more on that on Wednesday, and I'll give you your pack back question then too. Have a great day.